Shoftim. What kind of government are we looking for? Now in the Middle East there is a tremendous amount of turmoil. I'm speaking to you in the weeks of the beginnings of the book of Devarim. At the present time, at least, there is turmoil in Egypt. There is turmoil in Syria. And there is still turmoil in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And what everyone is seemingly talking about is the importance of democracy. And for the sake of democracy, there's one civil war after another taking place. And it's almost as though everyone is speaking about democracy, but no one is actually fulfilling democracy. What is the kind of government that the Torah really wants? Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 14. When you will come to the land which the Lord your God gives you and inherit it, and you live in it, and you say, grant me a king like all of the nations who live round about. Verse 15, you shall surely make for yourselves a king. But that king can't have too many wives, and can't have too much gold and silver, and can't have too many horses or Volvos or airplanes. He gets a second Sefer Torah. That's what he gets. There's a very real difference of opinion as to what kind of government the verses here are asking us to make. There are those who say that we're being asked to make a monarchy. The Rambam wants a monarchy. The Abarbanel says you can only make a monarchy if you really want one, if the people desire one. But there are other opportunities and other different kinds of governments as well. In the book of Judges, which comes after the book of Joshua, which comes immediately after the book of Devarim, the people come to the judge Gideon and asks him to be their ruler. And Gideon, the judge, says, I will not be your ruler, and my son will not be your ruler. God must be your ruler. And Josephus, therefore, says that if you look between these lines, and what the king has to have is a second Sefer Torah, that what these verses are really saying is that Israel must be a theocracy with God as our king. I want to suggest something a little bit different. I want to suggest that the Torah really doesn't legislate what kind of government. We can be a democracy, we can be a monarchy, we can be a benevolent dictatorship. That's not the point of the verses here in this source in the book of Deuteronomy. What the Torah is saying is that whatever government you structure, at the heart of the government must be the recognition that if it's a king, we serve ultimately not him, but the King of all kings. If it's a benevolent despot, at the end of the day, we serve the most benevolent of all despots, the Almighty God. that if it's a democracy, it must be that kind of ruler who understands very well that we were all created in the womb of the one divine presence, Shekhinah. That every human being was made in God's image, and therefore every human being has a right to be free and inviolate. In other words, Judaism doesn't care about the form of government. What Judaism desperately cares about is that whoever is at the helm, the government must understand that human beings must be free and dare not be harmed, certainly not by the government. And the government must not allow any human being to be harmed by any other human being with impunity. You see, I believe that when talking about the Arab Spring and the violence roundabout, the Western nations are hooked into democracy. And they see the most important value in a democratic form of government: an electorate by the people. But we sometimes forget that Hitler was elected by a majority in a democratic system of government. That Hamas was voted in by a majority in a democratic election. That Morsi in Egypt was elected in a popular democratic vote. But immediately, Morsi began to change the constitution and remove human freedoms. Hitler didn't even wait as long as Morsi did. So that for us, it's not even the way the leader becomes leader which is crucial. It is whether or not that leader understands that a human being created in God's image has inalienable rights, not to be violated by anyone, and to be fundamentally free. That's the only kind of government that we can accept, no matter how it was elected. But once it's a government that is responsible for human freedom, then it's a government which will ultimately be an upstanding member in the United Nations and can very well lead the world to redemption. Shabbat Shalom.